It started with a phone call at 2:17 a.m. I'd been asleep in that half-conscious way you fall into when you're waiting for something to happen. Though I hadn't known what I was waiting for until the screen lit up. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered for a second, then tapped. Silence, and then a woman's voice, low and fast, barely more than a breath. She's still alive. Click. No explanation. No second ring. Just the echo of those words pressing against the dark walls of my room, settling into the space like a warning or a promise. I sat there for minutes after, staring at the phone. I didn't call back. I didn't sleep. The morning came too brightly for what followed. April sunlight filtered through the curtains like it didn't know what day it was. My birthday, 18. I didn't expect celebration. Not in this house. But what I didn't expect was the smell of something sweet drifting up from the kitchen. Vanilla. Cake. My mother never baked. Not even on holidays. The last time I saw her crack an egg, I was 8 and she immediately dropped it, muttering about the mess. So when I walked down and saw her at the counter with frosting on her sleeve, I paused. She didn't look up. She didn't say happy birthday. Just kept her hands busy, like this wasn't happening, like I wasn't there. I sat at the table. My father walked in 5 minutes later, still in his undershirt, holding a manila envelope. His eyes didn't meet mine. Sit down, he said. I was already sitting. He placed the envelope on the table, but didn't open it. My mother finally turned, wiped her hands on a towel, and sat too across from me. Her mouth was tight. Her eyes focused on the wall behind me. The silence stretched. Then it came. You were adopted, she said flatly. No pause. No preamble. No emotion. My heartbeat slowed, like time itself had fractured. The words didn't feel real. What? My father nodded, not even blinking. We took you in when you were 2. Your biological mother couldn't care for you. We did what we could. What they could. Like I was a burden, a charity project. I didn't say anything. My brain scrambled for meaning, for context. But it didn't stop there. We think it's time you found your own way now, my mother added, her voice smooth like the frosting on the cake. You're old enough. Then he reached under the table and slid a black duffel bag across the floor, toward me. It bumped my shoe. There's some money in there. And clothes. We've arranged for you to stay at Shelter 42 until you figure things out. I looked down at the bag. The zipper was half open. A sweatshirt poked through. The one I wore when I broke my wrist in 8th grade. I hadn't seen it in years. They were kicking me out. On my 18th birthday. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood up slowly, picked up the bag, and said, "Thank you." Neither of them looked at me. Neither of them noticed the way my fingers gripped the strap too tightly, the white line of pressure building under my knuckles. They didn't see the flicker in my eyes, sharp and steady, because what they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined, was that 3 weeks ago I found something. It had been buried in the hallway cabinet behind a stack of tax folders. A yellowed envelope addressed to a DR, Evelyn Cross. Inside was a birth certificate, mine. Her name listed under mother. No father, no adoption record. Just 2 names, hers and mine, and a date. I'd already started digging. Library archives, online forums, old newspaper databases. The woman listed as my mother hadn't been unfit. She had been silenced. And now, as I stepped out into the spring morning with a duffel bag full of lies and a head full of fire, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt something else. Ready. Shelter 42 smelled like bleach and old metal. The kind of place you ended up when every other door had closed. The bed was thin, the walls yellowing under fluorescent light, and the woman at the desk didn't ask for my last name. Just took the money, handed me a key, and pointed down a hallway that echoed every footstep. I didn't unpack. I didn't even take off my shoes. I sat on the edge of the mattress with the envelope in my lap and stared at the name typed across the certificate inside. DR. Evelyn Cross. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. like a song I'd heard in a dream. The next morning, I left before sunrise. My breath fogged in the air. My stomach was tight with hunger, but I hadn't eaten. Not because I was fasting or punishing myself, but because I couldn't afford to. The few crumpled bills in my pocket wouldn't stretch far. I walked for an hour to the Larchmont Public Library, a fading brick building tucked between two parking lots. The librarian didn't look up when I entered, and I was grateful for that. The archives were hidden in the basement, where the air smelled of dust and forgotten things. I took the microfilm reader in the corner and loaded the reel I'd hidden in my locker a week ago. Evelyn Cross. I typed her name again, and again, until the articles blurred together. Then I found it. A headline from 2005. Local psychiatrist institutionalized after ethics complaint backfires. Below it, a photo. A woman with dark hair pulled into a knot, her eyes fierce even as two men led her away in handcuffs. Not fear, defiance. The article painted her as unstable, accused her of making false claims against a respected physician, Dr. Malcolm Steele, alleging unethical experimentation on female patients at a private recovery clinic. Steele denied it, naturally, and a month later, Evelyn was deemed mentally unfit and transferred to Ashbrook Institute for psychiatric evaluation. No charges filed against Steele. No investigation. Just silence. But the name, Malcolm Steele, it scraped something raw inside me. I'd heard it before. I just didn't know where. Back at the hostel that night, I opened my duffel bag and pulled out the only other thing I'd taken from the house. A bundle of letters I'd found in my father's study, all marked with the same embossed logo, the Steele Foundation for Women. I remembered asking him once when I was 12 what the foundation did. He said it supported women's wellness initiatives. I asked if it was like therapy. He just smiled. It's more than that. Now I understood. I looked back at the letters, the envelopes, the signatures. Gerald Whitmore, my adoptive father. His name was on donation receipts, board memos. And then I saw it, one letter, slightly crumpled at the edge, bore the words Research Collaboration Agreement. My hands started to shake, not from fear, from clarity. Gerald wasn't just a donor. He was involved, deeply. I wrote it down in the notebook I kept hidden beneath my mattress. Evelyn Cross, whistleblower. Malcolm Steele, predator in a lab coat. Gerald Whitmore, facilitator, maybe worse. The lines between them were tangled, but the message was clear. This wasn't about abandonment. This was containment. They hadn't just kicked me out because I turned 18. They'd done it because I was getting too close. That night, as I curled under the hostel blanket that barely reached my ankles, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway felt like a footstep. Every passing shadow felt like a warning. I kept the envelope clutched to my chest like a lifeline. And when I finally did fall asleep, it was only to wake up 2 hours later to the sound of something sliding under my door. A piece of paper. No envelope. No signature. Just one sentence typed in all caps. Stop digging, or you'll end up like Maya. The note stayed in my pocket for 3 days before I could even look at it without my chest tightening. Maya. Just a name. But didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a threat dressed up as a ghost. I searched for her everywhere. Forums, student bulletins, archived newspapers. One article, buried behind a paywall, mentioned a Maya Whitfield, journalism major, last seen leaving Hullowmere Sanctuary in 2019. There was no follow-up, just a single quote from her roommate. She thought she was being watched. I didn't know if Maya had made it out, but I knew where she went. And that meant I had to go too. The next morning, I packed my notebook, the envelope, and the last $10 I had. The bus to Greyhaven, a town 3 hours north, left at 10:40 a.m. I bought a ticket with a 5 and a handful of coins scraped from the bottom of vending machines. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. No one would have noticed if I did. The ride was quiet. Towns passed like fading photos. frost still clinging to rooftops even though it was already April. The driver didn't speak, and I was grateful. I spent the ride staring at the hills in the distance, wondering what kind of place buried someone like Evelyn Cross. Hollowmere Sanctuary sat at the top of a winding road, hidden behind trees that looked like they'd forgotten how to bloom. The building was old, stone and shadow, with a gate that creaked as the bus pulled away. It didn't look like a hospital. It looked like something people built to forget the world, and then forgot it too. The woman at the front desk didn't even glance up when I entered. Her glasses slid down her nose. Her voice was paper thin. "I'm here to visit a patient," I said, steadying my voice. "Name?" "Evelyn Cross." She blinked. "Relation?" I hesitated. "I'm her daughter." Her eyes finally met mine. For a long second, she just stared. Then, slowly, she picked up the phone, murmured something I couldn't hear, and nodded toward the hallway. "Second door on the left. Keep it brief." The corridor was cold. My footsteps echoed like they didn't belong there. I pushed open the door. She was sitting by the window, thin and still, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her hair was streaked with gray, pulled back. She didn't turn when I entered, just stared at the trees outside like she was waiting for something. "Evelyn." My voice cracked. She turned. Slowly, her eyes found mine, and for a second, just one, I saw something flicker behind them. Recognition. Pain. Maybe both. "I'm Lena," I said, stepping closer. "You had a daughter. 18 years ago. They told me you were unstable, that you were unfit. But I found the articles. I know what you tried to do. I know what they did to you." She exhaled, a small broken sound, and something in her posture shifted. Her fingers curled into her palms. Her shoulders lifted, then dropped again. "They still watch me," she whispered. "They think I don't remember, but I do." My heart thudded. "Who's they?" I asked. "Is it the Steele Foundation? Is it Gerald Whitmore?" At that name, her expression fractured. She blinked rapidly, like trying to push back something sharp. "Your father," her voice wavered. "He wasn't supposed to adopt you. He wasn't even cleared, but he pulled strings, got your file sealed. I tried to stop it, but by then I was too loud, too dangerous." I sat in the chair beside her, trying to steady the tremble in my hands. "What were they doing, Evelyn? What did Malcolm Steele do to those women?" Her eyes didn't leave the window, but her lips moved. "Experimental therapy, isolation, memory suppression trials. They said it was for PTSD, but it wasn't. They tested drugs, behavior programs, on women no one would miss. Addicts, runaways, wives that got in the way. And you?" I documented everything. I was young. I believed ethics mattered. Her voice cracked. "I sent the report to the state board. A week later, I was here." I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope, placed it on her lap. "You don't have to wonder anymore." She touched the paper like it might vanish. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the truth settle in her bones. Not hope, not even sadness. Resolve. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If they know you found me, I don't care," I said. "You're not crazy. You never were. And I'm going to prove it." That's when the footsteps came. Slow, deliberate, echoing down the hallway like the beginning of a countdown. Evelyn stiffened. Her whole body went rigid. Her eyes moved to the ceiling corners, watching nothing, but knowing where cameras used to be. The door opened. A nurse entered. Thin smile. Cold eyes. "I'm sorry. Visiting hours are over." I stood, but before I could turn, she leaned in just enough for her breath to brush my ear. "You're not the first to come asking about her," she murmured, "but the last girl didn't come back." Then the door closed, and the silence returned. The cold slapped me the moment I stepped out of Hollowmere. My breath fogged the air as if the building had exhaled me like something unwanted. I didn't walk to the bus stop right away. I found a bench beneath a dead oak tree and stared back up at the sanctuary, half hidden behind moss and frost. My hands trembled, not just from the chill, but from the things Evelyn had said, the things she hadn't. My mother wasn't a patient. She was a prisoner, and I had no idea how long she had left. The name Maya echoed in my head. The nurse hadn't said it as a threat, but it felt like one. Back in Greyhaven, I checked into a roadside motel with peeling wallpaper and a key that stuck in the lock. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, laptop open, Wi-Fi barely working. The clock blinked, 1:04 a.m. I searched everything. Hollowmere, Ashbrook, Silver Birch, names Evelyn had whispered. Nothing. Their digital footprints had been scrubbed clean. So I searched Maya. One archived article, one thread on a buried subreddit about whistleblowers, and a photo, grainy and old, posted by someone anonymous. In it, Maya stood outside a hospital entrance, holding a file folder close to her chest. Beside her, barely visible, was a nurse, Nina Porter. I zoomed in, pixel by pixel, until I could see the name tag on the scrub pocket. My heart thudded once hard. I remembered her face. She had been at the front desk when I walked into Hollowmere. I backtracked everything, searched her name, no social posts, no contact info. But one comment under a Facebook photo from years ago stuck out. Someone had tagged her in a picture at a nursing conference. Still doing nights at Hollowmere? You poor thing. That place is haunted. Haunted. The word rang too true. I made a burner account. I sent her a message. My name is Lena Carter. I visited Evelyn Cross today. I know what happened to her. I know about Steele. And I know about Maya. Please, I just want the truth. I didn't expect a reply. Not right away. But at 2:14 a.m. my screen lit up. Back in trance. Tomorrow, midnight. If anyone sees you, say you're lost. That next day stretched forever. I didn't leave the motel. I barely moved. Just stared at the envelope, at Evelyn's birth certificate, at my own signature on the release of responsibility form my adoptive parents made me sign. Legally severed, emotionally shackled. At 11:47 p.m., I left the motel and walked the 3 miles back to Hollowmere. The wind cut through my coat like knives. The grounds were darker now, moonlight swallowed by heavy clouds. I followed the gravel path around the building, past broken windows and rusted pipes. The maintenance door creaked open before I could knock. Nina stood inside, still in scrubs. Her face was pale, drawn, older than I remembered from the lobby. You came, she said. I had to. She nodded, motioned me in, and locked the door behind us. We moved fast, through a narrow hallway that smelled like bleach and mold. The walls pulsed with flickering light. She led me through an old break room, then into a filing room with locked cabinets, the kind that looked like they hadn't been touched since the 90s. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered, unlocking the third drawer with a brass key. But I saw what they did, to Evelyn, to the others, and when Maya showed up, I thought maybe someone would finally listen. She pulled out a manila folder and handed it to me. Maya Whitfield, she said softly. She was smart, asked questions no one else dared to. She had documents, court filings, medical logs. She came back a second time. Then her dorm was broken into, laptop wiped. She told her roommate she felt followed. 2 days later, gone. My throat tightened. You don't think she ran? No, Nina said. She was scared, but she wasn't a coward. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of Evelyn's treatment notes. Pages and pages stamped in red, paranoid, unfit, delusional. But the notes didn't sound like madness. They sounded like someone who was documenting facts. Then a final page, handwritten, dated the day before her arrest. Unauthorized drug trials. Memory alteration through chemical suppression. Administered under directive of DR. Malcolm Steele. I looked up. Why hasn't this come out? Nina shook her head. The Steele Foundation funds hospitals, clinics, even election campaigns. If you try to go through the system, you disappear. I'm not going to the system, I said, folding the page and slipping it into my jacket. I'm going to burn it down from the outside. She stared at me for a long second, then reached into her bag and handed me a small USB drive. Internal memos, scan logs, copies of Evelyn's original report. If you're serious, you'll need this. I am. Then don't come back here. I stepped out into the night, the door closing behind me like the final note of a symphony only I had heard. I wasn't just a girl looking for answers anymore. I was the threat they never saw coming. I didn't go back to the motel. I couldn't risk it. I didn't go anywhere with my name on it. Instead, I found a booth in a 24-hour diner 2 towns away and ordered a coffee I couldn't afford. The cup sat untouched, steam curling like smoke from a fuse. In my palm, the USB felt heavier than it should, like it was humming with the weight of every woman they tried to erase. I had no laptop, just my phone. I couldn't risk plugging the drive into anything traceable. So by noon the next day, I paid cash for a dented second-hand Chromebook and took it to the back corner of the public library, behind a shelf of forgotten travel guides. I waited until no one was watching. Then I opened the drive. It loaded slowly, like even the files themselves were hesitant to be seen. Folders popped into place, one after another. Patient logs, experimental reports, foundation memos, EV private files. My throat went dry. The patient logs were brutal, coded references to sedation trials, compliance sessions, and containment recommendations. No names, just numbers, but the patterns were unmistakable. Behavioral manipulation disguised as therapy, memory suppression labeled as treatment, and all of it happening under the Steele Foundation for Women. Then came the memos. One line chilled me. Patient EV remains a reputational threat. Recommend continued confinement. Monitor for media breach. Next to it, signed E. Whitmore. My hand shook. Gerald hadn't just facilitated this. He'd signed off on silencing my mother. And then there was a folder marked video archives. Dozens of untitled clips. I clicked one dated 2005. A woman strapped to a chair, her eyes glassy. Evelyn. Her voice slurred. Off-screen, a man asked, "Do you believe we're here to help you?" And Evelyn, barely audible, whispered, "You're helping me forget." I slammed the lid shut. It wasn't therapy. It was programming. I needed help, but not from the system. I needed someone like me. Someone who had already tried to speak and been buried for it. So I found her. Harper Quinn, a former investigative reporter fired years ago for chasing a lead on unethical psychiatric treatment. She hadn't published since, but there were whispers online, deep forums, encrypted threads, that she hadn't stopped digging. I sent her one message through an anonymous inbox. I have patient logs, memos, videos. My mother is one of them. And I think someone named Maya tried to reach you once. She disappeared. I didn't expect a reply, but I got one. 1 hour later. Where are you? I've been waiting for this for 15 years. She didn't live in a city. She lived off-grid in a cabin deep in Vermont, wrapped in pine trees and radio silence. When I arrived, she was already waiting on the porch, late 50s, sharp-eyed, wind-chapped skin, no small talk. Inside, she locked the door, pulled out a dusty laptop and gestured, "Show me." I handed her the drive, watched her face as she clicked through the folders. No reaction, just a slow, deliberate inhale when she saw the names. Then the videos, then Evelyn's handwritten report. "These are real," she murmured. "The language, the headers. This is how the Foundation writes. You couldn't fake this if you tried." "I'm not trying to fake it," I said. "I want to blow it up." She leaned back, her eyes sharp now, focused. Then we don't go to one outlet, she said. We go to all of them, at once. Trusted allies, whistleblower platforms, podcasts, former prosecutors. We make it so loud they can't kill it. I nodded. I want Gerald Whitmore's name buried in the same dirt he buried her in. She stared at me, then smiled, tight and full of steel. Let's make them choke on the truth. Within 24 hours, she duplicated the drive 6 times, sent it to 6 people across the country, each one given a unique password, delivered over encrypted calls. She called it fireproofing. Meanwhile, she drafted a full report, tying Evelyn's records to the experimental trials, linking Steele to institutional abuse and exposing Gerald's name on internal memos. Then my phone rang, a number I knew too well, Gerald Whitmore. I let it go to voicemail. Lena, I know what you're doing. I think we need to talk. You owe me that much. I didn't owe him anything, but I still said yes, because this time he wouldn't be the one writing the script. We met in a place where no one whispered. An old train station, half abandoned, half forgotten, its bones rusted with time, but still open to the public. Harper had chosen it. Open space, public cameras, too many witnesses for anything to go wrong. But I still kept my distance. I sat on a bench facing the exit. My bag rested beside me, the flash drive's twin already mailed. My phone recording, tucked deep in my coat pocket. He arrived late. Of course he did. Gerald wore the same beige wool coat he always wore when he was pretending to be harmless. Fatherly, reliable, a man with polished shoes and perfectly timed smiles. But I wasn't that little girl anymore, and he wasn't my father. You've grown into a clever girl, he said as he sat down beside me. Don't, I said, voice flat. Don't pretend you raised me out of love. His jaw twitched, just barely. You think this was simple? You think I wanted this? No, I said. I think you wanted control. He looked away for a moment, like he was deciding which mask to wear next. When he turned back, his voice was softer, more deliberate. Everything you found, it's dangerous. Not just for me. For you. For Evelyn. You release it, and people will get hurt. I looked him in the eye. They already have. He leaned closer. Lena, listen to me. No, I said. You listen. You took me to cover up your crimes. You helped lock up a woman who tried to protect patients. You built a foundation on lies. And now you want me to protect your legacy. He paused, and then the mask dropped. This will destroy you too, he said quietly. No, I whispered. It frees me. I stood up, walked away, didn't look back. That night, the storm broke. It started with a podcast episode, raw, unfiltered, hosted by a woman with nothing left to lose. Harper had timed it perfectly. While Gerald was still trying to contain me, she'd sent out every encrypted package. The next wave hit hard. Scanned documents, voice memos, court filings buried for years, redacted patient logs that suddenly weren't so redacted, Evelyn's handwritten notes, footage from inside the chair room, and then her voice, Evelyn Cross, slurred and sedated, whispering, "You're helping me forget." It hit the internet like wildfire doused in gasoline. By the end of the week, Hollowmere, Ashbrook, and the Steele Foundation were all trending. Whistleblowers began to surface. Former staff, former patients' families, anonymous letters from other institutions. 10 days after the leak, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation. Subpoenas were issued. Evelyn's case was reopened. Gerald Whitmore's name appeared alongside Malcolm Steele and 3 other executives in a class action lawsuit. I didn't expect the world to care, but it did. And while it burned, I went back for her. Harper made the call. By dusk, we were on the road, heading toward Hollowmere again, but not as victims this time. They didn't fight us at the gate. The staff had thinned. Some had already quit. The ones who stayed barely made eye contact. Nurse Nina met us at the back entrance. "She's been sedated, but still lucid," she said, handing me a clipboard. "If you're going to do this, do it now." I nodded. I found Evelyn in the same chair, by the same window. But something was different now. Her body sagged. Her eyes were dull. But when she heard my footsteps, she stirred. "Mom!" I whispered, kneeling down. Her fingers twitched. She turned slowly. "You found me," she said, voice brittle. "I always would." She smiled, just enough to crack the corner of her mouth. We walked out together. No alarms. No men in white coats. Just dusk light, cold wind, and a silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. The next weeks were a blur. Legal protection, medical care, trauma therapy, Evelyn's reintroduction into a world that had tried to erase her. The trial was delayed but not dismissed. Gerald never called again. He was indicted 3 months later. But even that wasn't the end. 6 months after the leak, a woman walked into a community clinic in a small town in Oregon. She used a fake name. Her eyes were tired, her posture guarded. But the nurse on duty recognized her from a podcast episode that had gone viral weeks earlier. She didn't say anything, just handed her a folded newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Whistleblower resurfaces. Evelyn Cross found alive after 18 years." The woman froze, then whispered she made it. That night I got a message. "It's her," Harper said. "Maya Whitfield. Alive." I flew out the next morning. The town was quiet, almost painfully normal. Maya met me in the back corner of a diner that smelled like burnt toast and strong coffee. She wore a baseball cap, no makeup, sleeves pulled over her hands. But her eyes were the same as in that old grainy photo, sharp and searching. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there for a while. 2 women who should have been erased but weren't. "They tried to make me disappear," she said. "I let them. I thought, if I stayed dead, maybe they'd stop hurting the others." "They didn't," I said. "But you were the first. You made it possible for me to find her." She looked down at her coffee, then back at me. "So, what now?" It was a question that hung heavier than it should. What happens after revenge? After the fire? After the empire crumbles, and you're left standing in the ash? I didn't have a clean answer, but I had an idea. "We build something better," I said. "No more secrets. No more silencing. We start with truth and we go from there." And we did. Together, Maya and I launched an independent platform. A space for survivors, whistleblowers, the forgotten voices left behind in locked rooms and sealed files. We called it the Cross Line, named not just for Evelyn, but for every line they crossed to keep people, like her, quiet. Evelyn was slow to adjust at first. The world had changed. Her hand still shook sometimes when she heard a door click shut, but she smiled more now. She even started writing again. Essays, letters, reflections. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was living. I didn't go back to Gerald's house. I didn't need closure. He didn't deserve the dignity of a final word. He was sentenced to 25 years without parole. Malcolm Steele died before the trial began. Heart attack, or maybe just fear catching up to him. Either way, they didn't win. We did. And not just by tearing them down, but by refusing to let them bury us. Sometimes I still hear the echo of that first phone call. "She's still alive." Back then, it sounded like a warning. Now it sounds like a vow. Because I am too. Still alive. Still fighting. And never, never quiet again.